I wanted to talk about the state of commentary, mainly because after every big event, we seem to have a lot of discussion on it. And I just wanted to talk about the state of where we're at specifically in Melee. And one of the big things that I'm going to talk about is how we can go about improving as a community moving forward. So one of the big things I want to first start off with is local commentary and local talent. CEO Dreamland and regional size events typically use local talent to fill up most of the commentary blocks. And I think that's perfectly fine, mainly because we should be highlighting local talent. It's the local players in the local community that often help with the backbone of those regional size events. So I think to continue to grow your local region is actually really important. And if you don't highlight them, they become less motivated to help out in growing the community and staying motivated to help out throughout the rest of the year. So with even Dreamland and events like Big House, although Big House 6 didn't quite do it last year, I think it's reasonably okay to foster opportunities for your local talent. And for pools and for early stages of bracket, I think it's perfectly fine if you allow your local commentators to showcase their talents and get opportunities, because if you don't allow them to have those kind of blocks, then they never have the opportunity to grow. So it's kind of like the chicken or the egg dilemma, because you want talented commentators to showcase the matches, but if you don't allow your local commentators those opportunities, they will never grow. So I'm okay with that. The issue that I kind of have an issue, the issue that I have an issue with, I think the big source of contention is at what point does the local commentary cut off in favor for national level commentary. So like bringing in talent to the events to commentate the upper level matches. And it's something that, depends on event. The reality is here, a lot of the smaller regional events like CEO Dreamland, which isn't really small, but they don't really have the budget to really, pay for flights and hotels and money for top level commentators. It's just not in their budget. And frankly, their main goal is to be established well enough within the community to get enough venue fees to sustain themselves. So in terms of the experience and what they want to optimize for, they're going to optimize their budget towards making sure that the attendees have a good time. And then secondary is the stream. Now, I know people at Twitch would largely disagree with that philosophy. They want the stream to be the best because it grows in the community implicitly. Like, if you're in Jabali's shoes, you're making sure that you're spending your time and resources to make sure that the attendees have a great time, because they provide you the bulk of the revenue. Whether or not you have 5,000 or 50,000 viewers, frankly, doesn't make much of a difference in terms of money that you get to spend towards resources like commentators. But, I think here's where my general line draws. When you have national level talent in terms of players playing against one another in matchups that you don't really see regularly, so like let's say at CEO Dreamland, I would say it's around like top 16 to top 32 where we really begin to see top players from different regions play against one another. I think that's when you should really invest in top level commentary, because that helps the experience, as opposed to having commentators that don't know matchups, that don't know player history, that aren't charismatic, because it ruins experiences of matches that have never been seen before. And that's where I generally draw the line in terms of where local commentators should kind of take a step back for national level talent. Now, if the event can't afford, top level commentators, then that's something that you can't really solve. And you're just going to have to use local commentary, which unfortunately is the reality. And I'm empathetic towards TOs because like a lot of them can't really afford to fly a D1, a Scar, a Toph, a Homemade Waffles, or a Phil. With that being said, I guess here's kind of where local commentators can improve, and I hope they embrace this, they listen to this or they watch this down the road. I think the big thing that is an issue for new upcoming commentators is the fact that they don't really invest their time into learning the game. And as a result, when you don't have game knowledge and you don't know the players, then you have very little information that you can draw from to talk about the match. And the issue with that is when you're in a high-paced match, Melee is a high-paced game. The issue is that if you have nothing to say, then what will you lean back on? And oftentimes what will happen is you lean on very trivial information like nice back air or very generalized matchup information, which is frankly not even correct. It's very uninteresting. It's condescending and patronizing sometimes to go that general about gameplay to an audience that won't even care, where it's not going to bring value to the event. The flip side is, well, okay, if you're not going to talk about gameplay, then what else can you draw from? And the temptation then is to draw on what other commentators say and meme them. And I think memes are okay within a certain level, but if all you can say are memes and low level information and you can't really explain much insight that's valuable to the viewer, then frankly, to be perfectly honest, you do not know enough about Melee to be commentating higher level matches or those prize 2-hour blocks that everybody wants. Because if you don't know the information, it's pretty obvious because you're going to backfill with information that frankly doesn't matter. So here's my hope. I mean, I think for the general local commentator, I think they play a decent amount, but I think the level of knowledge is the very first step that you need to be successful. Like, I think local commentators have like some banter, they have some chemistry, but then because the knowledge is so lacking, you can very quickly tell. And it's not a matter of knowing like chain grab percentages or frame data, but just enough that you can fill in information and talk in a way that's meaningful to the audience. So if you're struggling in filling up space, I would highly recommend that you research your players, you research matchups, you play Melee more, you watch more in-depth videos, you have discussions with top players, because that's the very first step in becoming a much better commentator. If you look at all the top commentators today, like at some point in their lives, they've been at least a top 100 level player. In some points of their career, they understand the metagame, they understand what players are looking for, and they can give insight. And if you're a local player that goes like 1 and 2 in bracket, it's going to be very hard for you to understand whether or not a player has made a mistake or they made a bad decision, or if their intent was good or if their gameplay is solid. You're going to have no idea of what to talk about because you can't infer anything because you don't know anything about the game. So, I mean, if you look at all the top commentators, Homemade Waffles, Phil, Toph, Scar, Vish, like all those players I just listed are at least top 100 or have been in some point in their lives. Fendrick Lamar is doing a lot better in his locals. He's trying his best to get more information. I would say out of all the top commentators, Webbs is probably the weakest player, but at the very least, like, he does his research and he does his homework to at least sound competent in what he talks about. And I know that he doesn't really take too many risks in talking about gameplay, but at the very least, he does his homework, and that's why he's still really good at commentating, even though he's not like a top level player. So if you can't offer any insight whatsoever, and it's not even like talking about nitty-gritty details, it's just like enough that you can give the audience some sort of like background to what's going on, as opposed to just going totally in the dark. That's number one. The other thing that I think we can all use, and I'm not like trying to say like I'm the best at it, but I think everybody should go to classes. I think it's been a huge help for me in terms of understanding what to do when the camera's facing me, to understand how to banter better, to understand how to fill in space, to understand how to elongate and shorten my phrasing to make it sound more dynamic. I think there's so much value in it, and I think if you're trying to improve and get those blocks, I think it's something that will give you a tremendous advantage over a lot of commentators that are aspiring to grow. I do say this though. I know I'm being pretty hard at against local commentary, but I do think we still need to field talent, because all our top commentators aren't going to be in Melee forever. I mean, I think we had Scar, had a kid, and a lot of people are getting older, so we have to constantly influx talent, because there's going to be one day, if we keep overusing the same people over and over again, it leaves us with a huge it leaves us with a huge hole. Sorry, there's a weird pause. My screen went blank, mainly because I went idle. There's going to be a huge hole. So cultivating local talent and finding good commentators is something we're going to need long term. So I'm not really saying like we should never give local commentators like no opportunities, but I do think we need to find a way to foster growth at all levels. So that's like my thoughts on local commentary. Like I'm definitely in favor of it. I do think we can all push each other to become better. And then the next topic I really want to talk about is the type of commentary that fits different situations. So this is something that comes up very often, and I think it's because of like people's different ideas of what good commentary is. And in certain aspects it can be very subjective, and some people like certain things emphasized, and some people like other things emphasized. And so there's a lot of conflict that comes into play, where a group of people want analytical commentary. They want people to just only talk about the match, no biases, or no bias rather. And there's other people that really love the banter and chemistry of people like Scar and Toph or Brandon and Phil. Not to say they don't analyze the match, but I do think that some people emphasize the wrong things in the wrong state of the tournament. So if it's early pools, frankly, there's not really much insight you can really give to the matchup because everybody's making mistakes left and right. So I think, especially with slower matches where people are messing up, I think banter is perfectly fine. And I think that having Scar and Mango talk about funny things that are tangentially related to the match are okay. I mean, I think it provides a lot more entertainment and value to the viewer, as opposed to saying player A messed up again, player B didn't punish again. Oh wow, player A totally lost stage control, player B is messing up. Like it's really hard to be really excited about a match when it's not close, both players are messing up, and you don't have any idea what they're doing because they don't know what they're doing. So, but in later stages of the match, I actually do think we've probably taken a little bit too far in terms of going too tangential in terms of analyzing the match and commentating the match. And I think the really bad case was at Smash Summit once we hit top 8, where I do believe that we should be focusing on the match given what's at stake and given who's playing. That going on tangents talking about the food you ate in Mafia is very not appropriate to the importance of the match, and I think it's a huge issue that we tend to have as a community, to emphasize banter and talk about the commentators and their personalities more than the match and what the players are doing. I think when commentary becomes more about the commentators more than the match itself, then that's where the line has gone too far, because fundamentally it's about the game, it's about the gameplay, it's about the players playing. If it's ever come to the point where you're like in grand finals and it's more about the commentators than the game, then there's something fundamentally wrong with that, in my opinion. Not trying to cast shade on anybody, though. I think it's like a nebulous line, and I think that even like with our best banterers, like Scar and Toph, I love them, and it's very entertaining. Like I could listen to them, like I could plug my phone in while I'm driving into the radio, auxiliary port, and I can listen to them, and it's very entertaining. But at the same time, when it's grand finals, like it should never be about Scar and Toph. It should be about who's playing in grand finals. So that's just my opinion on it. It's not to cast shade on anybody. I love the banter. I love the chemistry of our commentators, but I do think it's an issue. I also do think that if I were to encourage anybody here, that it's like I think finding commentator blocks is really hard at this point. It's similar to like trying to jump into the top 20 in Melee, mainly because the people who are in those commentator blocks now started early when Melee wasn't very big, and so by virtue of getting experience early and getting those slots and building relationships with tournament organizers, by default we kind of get those slots. And even though I'm pretty sure there are better commentators out there in the world, I'm pretty sure like I'm not the most deserving commentator, but like just by virtue of my networks and what I've done in the past, like I get those slots over other people. But I'll say this, I think that if you do put in good work over time, you get better. There's a opportunity down the road where you kick ass at your local tournaments. You might get some regional slots, and if you kick ass there and people love you and you're good, then you get those top 32 slots down the road. And if people love you and you're doing a good job, you keep moving up the ranks. And that's how Webbs and Vish and other people got up into getting those good slots of commentary, even though they weren't there from the very beginning. So there is, spots there. If you put in good work, it's not going to happen immediate. So if you're just a local commentator in your region and you're not getting those slots yet, it does take time. But if you put in good work and like you get your break at a regional, then you only move up as long as you put in good work. So it's something that's very difficult, but I think it's very rewarding. I do know that there's a bunch of local commentators that are pretty solid, and I hope that they do get opportunities. So that's kind of just some of my general thoughts on commentary. I don't really think of anything else. I do think that we all can get better. When I watch myself now, when I watch other commentators, even the ones that I really love and respect and look up to, I listen to it, and there's so much room for improvement for all of us. So I hope that our top commentators don't get entitled to the point where they think they deserve their commentary blocks, and they continue to put in work, because everybody can get a lot better. I can get a lot better. And so can everybody else. And the moment that we as the commentators think that we don't need to practice, that we can just come and sit down and just commentate and not put any effort towards improvement, it will drag our collective commentary down, and it makes us lose opportunities, and it makes us lose potential new people entering the scene, because I believe commentary is very important. So those are just my general thoughts. I'm going to probably put this up on YouTube. It's a little bit of a scramble, but these are just my nested thoughts on commentary right now in 2017 on April 22nd.